It's time. The ATM podcast, episode 37. Martin Devlin from the platform. The irrepressible Mark Watson. Many topics to talk about. We're going to kick it off with Manu Vatuvei, back with the Warriors in a mentoring role. Hayden Wilde's remarkable performance in Yokohama, which you alerted me to on the weekend, and I switched channels to watch that. I was watching rugby. I switched over to watch that. Amazing. Should New Zealand try and co-host the 2025 Rugby League World Cup? Blues, Crusaders and Hurricanes all resting players, and two of your favourite names in sport, Beauden Barrett, Shaun Johnson.
Apologise to me!
Let's kick it off with Manu Vatuvei. We had Cameron George on the show earlier today, Watto. Look, I've thought long and hard about this, mate, and I've kind of fluctuated from this, from that. I'm all for giving most people a second chance in life. There are those that commit certain crimes who I don't believe deserve to be ever let out. As far as he's concerned, he seems to have given a hell of a present from the parole board after just 1 year inside. And let's not dilute the guy's crimes. He was involved with methamphetamine distribution, sale, importation, all of that. I mean, let's not dilute that at all. But the more I think about it, the more I think that, you know, it's an unpaid mentoring role with the Warriors on a part-time basis where they think they can get him to help younger players and talk to younger players. They've rehabilitated guys like Russell Packer, Sean Metcalf for that appalling crime that he committed. Martangi as well has been, you know, is another name you can add to this list. Ultimately, it's their decision to make, and I feel it's a very compassionate decision, and I just hope it doesn't backfire on them, because what I'd love to see from him more than anything, Manu, is when he comes out, is to show some genuine remorse for his offending. If you remember, when he did get arrested, he posted on social media that he wasn't guilty and he was going to fight these charges and everything else. So he hasn't really come out publicly and said, hey, I did do this and I want to change my life. I'd like to see a little bit of that, but that's just me.
Yeah, a dumb decision from the Warriors, plain and simple. The guy is a methamphetamine drug smuggler, distributor, seller. You've only got to have a look at the scourge on society. It is just one of the most heinous drugs, incredibly addictive. The Warriors are purely in the game of winning sports games. They're not a halfway house. They're not some sort of rehab unit. You've got sponsors like One New Zealand who are just sitting there going, hang on a minute, whether he's been paid or not, they've now got an affiliation with a meth dealer. It's just not a good look. The Warriors are in a really nice place at the moment where they've turned things around and they're starting to look like a football team. They're showing some heart, they're showing some commitment. Here we are now discussing Manu Vatuvei. Here we are discussing meth. Here we are, and now aligning it with the Warriors. I just cannot believe that they want to go down this path. Look, I feel for Manu Vatuvei. Sometimes people are vulnerable. As I've often said, sometimes you just can't put back in what God left out. There are a lot of people in the NRL that offer mentoring. There are units that are set up to help young players come through. I'd like to think when you're recruiting young players that you can sort of identify those that are sort of vulnerable and probably not put them in your team anyway, because I think they're just ultimately going to let you down. Look, I think it's up to the Pacific Island community. I think it's up to the church. I think it's up to his family to help him rehab, to help him integrate back into society, to get around him and give him the support. But, you know, if the Warriors are going to get involved, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, but yeah, this is just a really, really dumb decision.
Don't you think, though, that from their perspective, and this is what Cam George said to us today, you know, because the way that it was reported by the mass media, it sounded as though, you know, all of a sudden he'd just been re-employed. It's not that at all. It's on a very ad hoc basis. But also his attitude was that, listen, he is one of ours. It's like family. We treat everyone like it is a family, and therefore we are not going to leave somebody on the floor. We're going to try and pick them up and we're going to try and help them. Don't you think there is good in that?
Yeah, but, you know, they've often gone on about the family, haven't they, in times when they've had casino sponsorship, whiskey and bourbon sponsorship, fast food sponsorship, you know, really sort of selling the family values. I find that just a lot of PR. I just find that a whole lot of nonsense. It's all very well for Manu to come out and tell people what they... But has he really and truly been rehabbed? I mean, has he actually come through the other side here? As you said, Martin, has he actually genuinely come out and showing any sort of level of remorse? It's funny though, isn't it? I'll give you an analogy. It's a bit like the movie star who's worth $100 million goes into a restaurant and the restaurant owners give it to them for free. Here, have the meal on us. Yet the vagrant out on the street who hasn't eaten in a week gets kicked to the curb. And now we're all wanting to come out and feel sorry for Manu Vatuvei. I mean, this guy had it all, mate. He had every opportunity and he still went down a dumb path. why should we have a level of sympathy? We don't show sympathy to a lot of other people out there who you could argue have never ever going to break the cycle, or always, because of the way they were brought up, the family environment, the family union, were always going to go down a path of crime. We don't sit there and give them the big hug. The Warriors aren't coming out and saying, hey, we'll give you a job. You're a fan for a long time. You're part of our family. It is just utter nonsense.
Topic number 2, quickly with the Rugby League. Should New Zealand try and co-host the 2025 Rugby League World Cup? We're going to agree to disagree on that Manu thing. I can understand exactly where you're coming from on this, but I don't know. Maybe I'm going soft and mushy in my old age. I kind of feel
okay, but Martin, you go and talk to the people that have been devastated by P, and you go and talk to the young policeman's family who was shot in West Auckland by a shotgun blast because some guy was as high as a kite on the damn stuff. Go and talk to the police about what this stuff does every damn week. They'll go to some sort of party where people are smoking marijuana, mate. They don't have any problems because most of them are just hungry and laughing and quietly
watching
sleep
some
on
TV,
the couch.
giggling
But
in the corner, yeah.
you go and look at what this stuff does and go and talk to some of the other families. That's what people forget, you know. They forget the victims and all of it. And now suddenly Manu's the victim.
No, I don't think he is a victim. And that's what I want to make that loud and clear. And that's why my attitude to it initially was, hey, I'd like to see something from him. And I suppose what he's told the parole board, we need to hear in public as well, because the parole board has obviously believed what he said in the path that he's going to. Should we try and co-host the 2020?
Can I just say that if he wasn't a famous warrior, there is a subconscious bias. Let's use that word.
Of course there is, mate.
There's a subconscious bias here.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, but that's the whole point of it, and that's why they're doing it, because he is one of their own. It's not just any old guy here walking the street. It's a guy that played over 200 games for the club, that for 10 years in a row got 10 tries a year. He's an absolute legend at that club, and so that's why they're reaching out to him to help him. And also Jerry Susu's been involved ever since he was arrested, got convicted, and right throughout this whole process. And I trust that guy's judgment.
But have a look now, mate. We've already got a split opinion on it. So suddenly, what's been a really good story for the Warriors so far, now there's a distraction. That's all this is. It's a major distraction for a club who just don't need it in a year of rebuild. Apologise to me!
2025, the Rugby League World Cup. Speaking with Greg Peters yesterday, CEO of New Zealand Rugby League, he said, yeah, look, they're in discussions. They're trying to pick up the pieces here. But he also said to us loud and clear, there is no money to be made here, Mark. That this tournament just doesn't turn a dollar. And as much as, they would love to be benevolent in terms of, hey, taking it to the islands, playing it in Papua New Guinea, doing all of this stuff. I mean, we all love these stories, don't we? We love the Tongan fans getting out en masse. We love what we saw, even though Samoa lost the final, people going nana in the town squares in Mangere and Otahuhu. But there is no cash involved. It's a bit like women's rugby. I mean, you can want it to be as successful as you want, but there's no money in this at the moment. So is this a good decision for New Zealand Rugby League?
Well, look, I don't think everything should come down to money. I don't think it should necessarily cost us money. And if it is going to cost, you've got to weigh it up. And look, I do think there's a real sense of nationalism. I think there is, community. You can't underestimate that feel-good factor amongst the community. And sometimes it's up to organisations, and their job is simply for that. Now, you do look at the Tongan community, you look at the Samoan community, how important it is to them. We want to see a Rugby League World Cup, but what I'd like to see is, say, 8 or 12 teams, not 16. I don't think there is room for women's rugby league. I think that's just virtue signalling. There's no depth in it. I think it's just a minority sport. I know they're trying to do some stuff on the disability side of it, and I think there's opportunity there, but to what degree and what level? So let's host it, but let's just scale it back. Let's be realistic about it. And actually, let's just go, well, we can have 12 or 16 teams and we can try and sort of manufacture the global importance of this game. But the fact that no other country wants to host it, France has pulled out of it, just demonstrates when it's all broken down, really the game is only relevant in England, Australia and New Zealand. So look, I'm all for it. I don't have any problem with it. In fact, I'd rather see a Rugby League World Cup because I think I still think there's a high level of tribalism in league that rugby and a lot of other sports no longer have. So look, if they can pull it off, let's do it. But let's host the final here. Let's not give that to Australia. Apologise to me!
Hayden Wilde racing triathlon world circuit in Yokohama. I was watching, I can't even remember what Super Rugby game I was watching on the weekend, and you texted
I think there are a couple of B teams playing each
reserve
other
teams
because
playing
of
each other
rest and rotation. Because it's been such a successful formula for the All Blacks in recent years. Why wouldn't you adopt it this year?
Well, we'll get on to that in a second, but you'd messaged me and you said, tune in, this guy is monstering it. Mate, I was just glued to it. I was just addicted to it. I watched a champion athlete destroy a field, and that was the greatest thing about it, Mark. And I only tuned in for the run, so I didn't actually see the swim and I didn't see the bike. But I saw this guy in the run, you could feel his attitude. He was in the pack for a while. He looked at those other guys and he just went, no, I'm going to stomp you. And he raced out in front. And then they were lagging a bit behind. Then he looked behind him again. He said, I'm going to do it again. He was just incredibly powerful and strong. Where does this lead for this guy? Is he the best in the world at the moment, and then on to the Olympics?
Remarkable talent. I remember commentating the Port of Tauranga half Ironman back in about 2016, and a young 18-year-old Hayden Wilde finished third against a very good field, which included the likes of Cameron Brown, Braden Curry, and our top endurance athletes. I remember saying to his coach, Craig Kirkwood, at the moment, let him have nothing to do with Triathlon New Zealand, because I was a bit cynical about the high-performance program, but this guy's an ITU athlete. Always hard, though, if you don't come from a swimming background, to get your swimming up to the level that is now required at World Cup triathlon at Olympic Games level. You can't win the race in the swim, but boy, you can lose it. And so he went down. He's got Liz Van Weerle, former Olympian, working with him in the pool, and just to get his swimming up to the level that he's at is remarkable in itself. And then, he clearly started to, really work on his running to the point now where he's arguably, alongside of one or two, the best runner purely here in New Zealand, national champion over 5,000 and 10,000 metres. I think he's good enough to qualify for the Olympics purely as a runner.
Wow.
And we had the Brownlee brothers for a number of years, and these guys came along and just took the sport to another level, almost to the point where I was a little bit, you sometimes look at them race and go, God, I'm a little bit suspicious. These guys are just too good. But then you start going behind the scenes and looking at what they're doing, and you suddenly realise that, this is where the sport is going. And Alistair Brownlee, two-time Olympic champion, was running times good enough to possibly go to the Olympics on his own over 10,000 metres. Hayden Wilde is running quicker than Alistair Brownlee was.
Wow.
He has taken it again to another level. Now, his great rival is Alex Yee. Now,
he wasn't in that race on the weekend.
Alex Yee was not part of that race, right? And they will meet in 2 weeks' time. But as I said to Craig Kirkwood, his coach, and we were texting back and forth, no one on Saturday in Yokohama, not Alex Yee, no one would have touched him that day. I mean, he was in cruise control, and he ran 29 minutes and 30 seconds for 10K and coasted the last kilometre and a half. Not only that, he was very smart on the bike. It was wet conditions in Yokohama. There were some boys on the front who were genuinely turning it up. I mean, you were in a criterium. Anytime you see the riders in one long line, you know the pace is on. Every time they bunched, well, clearly the pace is off. He sat third or fourth wheel the whole way. He stayed out of trouble. He stayed in the perfect position. So not only a brilliant performance, tactically very smart. And so, Alex Yee, I think Alex Yee over 5 kilometres, the distance that we saw at the Commonwealth Games, is the better athlete. Over 10 kilometres, we've got a year to Paris. I think Hayden Wilde might just go on and become one of the greatest the sport has ever seen.
Wow.
And I think we could have a really special moment in Paris next year. And I think we could have a guy who potentially could do what Hamish Carter did back in 2004. But talking to Craig as coach, the big emphasis here is to win the World Championships. And now the World Championships historically always just one race on one day, but they've sort of adopted more of a Formula One type format where it's your best races, number of races, and then the final race of the season is sort of doubled up points. And it's looking pretty good for him. But yeah, what an incredible talent. Just a kid who grew up in Tauranga. Dad died at a young age. And I always remember talking to the great running coach, Arthur Liddy. You see, the talent's everywhere. It's everywhere you go. Sometimes you've just got to take the talent, maybe just connect them with the right sport. And as they say, the rest is history. But man, the kid is an absolute and utter freak.
Remember the name!
Apologise to me!
Let's finish on some Rugby Blues Crusaders, Hurricanes all resting players this weekend, because of course it's the business end of the Super Rugby competition, and what the fans want, what the sponsors want, is for the big names to be missing. They just don't get it. They just continually don't get it. They will never get it. A second division competition, not because of a lack of effort from those who are out on the field playing, but they're not allowed to bloody play, Watto. I mean, we keep going back to the same stupid thing. To go to the World Cup, Saturday, 15 days, quarterfinal, semi-final, final. But the A-team has to play together to get combinations before that. They're going to have to play 4 or 5 test matches. And what the hell are we thinking? Why are we still in this trap where we think that the best thing for our best rugby players is for them to play intermittent?
No, it's ridiculous. I was having a conversation yesterday with Gordon Simpson, who played 22 games for Scotland, played for the Hurricanes, and he is just, we have heard that both Artie Severe and Geordie Barrett won't be named for the Hurricanes to take on the Chiefs. Now, the Chiefs have come off the back of a loss, so has that halted their momentum? Are they there potentially for the taking? The Hurricanes are always there or thereabouts. They've never been beaten up badly. They are good enough. I think
they lost all the best teams.
They're the team of the future, though. but you're not going to beat the Chiefs
No,
without Artie Severe and Geordie Barrett.
no.
So why should Hurricanes fans turn up in Hamilton at all? Why should you bother? I mean, they show you no respect. I had David Hill on a program I did the other day, assistant coach for the Chiefs, and I asked him about the number of changes the Chiefs made, and was that part of the reason they lost to the Reds? And he was very diplomatic, but you could sense the frustration. He basically said, look, we're at the mercy, aren't we? We're at the mercy of New Zealand rugby. And then they all have that sort of line, but we all want to see the All Blacks do well. But as you know, and I know, there is zero evidence. There is zero.
I'm a Super Rugby coach. My job is to coach this team to success. And if I don't get that, I get axed.
Well, look at has the Melbourne Storm in recent times in the NRL or Penrith, do they rest and rotate?
No,
they don't. The best players are available. They play all year.
They play
We
Origin.
can still have a successful All Black team without compromising our domestic competition. Now, what did you want to mention about Beauden Barrett and
Sean Johnson?
Sean Johnson.
Eat your words. Take it back. Two of the greatest players that have ever donned jerseys.
Did you watch the game on Saturday night?
Okay,
Did you watch the game on Saturday night?
One bad game. What I was already had.
What?
Mate, one bad game.
2 bad years. I wouldn't take them.
Devlin,
You gotta love sport.
the platform.